Alright, I want to talk about the stupidity Colin Kaepernick showed in his Netflix show. Now, this is from CBSNews.com, which is, fairly liberal website. So I don't, I don't want to sit there and put up something that's trying to paint him in a bad light or taking him out of context or whatever. It's like, I want to actually just get right to the point. He, has a new show, like I said, on Netflix. And it compared the treatment of players at the NFL Combine to slavery. And this is so intellectually lazy and so offensive to people that were slaves in the past and are slaves in the present. Because slavery still exists. It exists in a lot of places, and in some places right out in the open. But it's so offensive to those people. Because what he's specifically talking about is at the Combine, when they poke, some people call it the Underwear Olympics. Because they poke and they prod and they give you a test, physical and mental test, in front of a whole bunch of people. You gotta run, you gotta jump, you gotta, you take some like mental tests and stuff too, the Wonder Lake, among other things. But anyway, he compares that to fucking slavery. It's like, that's so fucking stupid. Like, it's almost unbelievably dumb. And the thing is, he's not the first guy to do this. There's also, because there's plenty of like sports journalists who say this exact same shit. And it's like, dude, you make yourself out like you're the biggest moron in the world. Because you're talking about, slavery. The people didn't have a choice. In the NFL or NBA or whatever, you have a choice. You can not play. You get paid a shit ton of money to put up with any of this stuff. And it sits there and besides the fact also, you don't get beaten. You don't get killed. You don't get sexually assaulted and mutilated by the owners and so on and such forth. But there's also a bunch of sports journalists, hell even guys I like, although he's not as much a sports journalist now as he's a TV analyst, but Michael Wilbon, pardon the interruption, I believe Bill Rhoden has said this other times. They talk about the owners and stuff having a plantation mentality. Again, intellectually lazy and just stupid to say. And it's not at all like a plantation, for the reasons I just laid out. You have a choice to play. You have a choice to be there. If you don't want to be there, you go elsewhere. There's, depending on the league, 30 teams or 32 or whatever. So you have other options. You can go try out for another team. I mean, it depends, of course, because of contracts and so on and so forth. But I'm saying, if you don't want to put up with this stuff, you don't have to. Go out in the real world and see what it's like. Then you'll all of a sudden you'll be begging to go back to your multi-million-dollar paying job. It's just ridiculous. And they even mention here, actually, I give them a little bit of credit for it, because here's the part he's talking about. They show scenes from a slavery auction, as he's talking about this shit. He said, Kaepernick received some heat. Some? You think so? It's fucking stupid. Even people who like Kaepernick were probably saying to themselves, what are you doing? This is fucking stupid. I mean, hell, Burgess Owens, a former NFL safety who played for the Jets and Saints, he's currently a Utah representative, criticized Kaepernick on Twitter. Even Ava DuVernay, the series co-creator along with Kaepernick, she directed that episode and discussed the comparison. She said that the comparison is about social control of a black body. What about all the white players that are there? What the fuck are you trying to say? Excuse me. Oh God, sorry about that. So that's the point that's trying to make, and that was really Colin's idea, to say as the black men are being processed through this combine process, this combine experience, what that felt like then. Okay, it might have felt like that to him, but it's stupid to say. I mean, Jesus Christ, it felt very similar to our ancestors who were also processed for profit. And that's a facepalm-inducing thing right there. And to be honest, I give him I give CBS News a little bit of credit for talking about the criticism that Kaepernick got. Then I take all that credit away because they don't criticize them themselves. Like, are you fucking serious? That's ridiculous, man. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. Like, when they talk about he hasn't played a professional football game since 2016, since after leading kneeling protest. And the thing is about that, yeah, Kaepernick should have gotten a chance somewhere, and some of it is because he didn't want to, because he wanted to be a starter. There's the stuff with the Broncos, the stuff with the Ravens. He should have been given a chance. Okay, I mean, I can agree to that. That's fine, whatever. But it's also his own demands. Or like his girlfriend, said that accused basically the Baltimore Ravens owner of being a racist and stuff right before he was getting ready to sign Kaepernick. So he put the kibosh on that. Well, obviously. And so it's like, he's had chances. And it used to be. It doesn't happen as much anymore because, he's 33. He hasn't played, in 5 years. But it used to be every time a quarterback would go down, they'd say, hey, we need to bring in Kaepernick. The thing about Kaepernick is he's good enough to play in the league. So, I mean, he helped the 49ers get to the Super Bowl that one year. And they almost won. They had a chance. Of course, they threw a fucking stinking fade route. Which, the fade routes, what, God, that's a whole other thing I can go into about that fade routes into the end zone. It's like, man, get the fuck out of here with that shit. That most often doesn't work. Unless you have a special type of receiver. And Crabtree was a good receiver. He just wasn't, he's not a fade guy. You need a Calvin Johnson kind of stuff for that. Among other guys. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, I suppose. But, there's a picture of him. And, well, of course, what's fucked up is Kaepernick has white parents. I mean, it's complicated. I won't go into it. It ain't like a, this huge gotcha type moment. But it's like, the guy's had chances. He should have been given a few more. That's fine. They did a whole dog and pony show or whatever with like Goodell being involved and everything. And if we're gonna have a big old in front of all these teams and stuff, and of course he had to go and fuck it up because he had to sit there and it's not going to be here. It's going to be elsewhere. I'm going to do this. And he doesn't want to play in the league because he's a bigger name not playing in the league. If he can maintain the appeal in his eyes of being, I'm banned from the league because I'm too dangerous, that's more appealing to him than actually being in the league. Because if he goes into the league, if he were to play back, if he were to be in the NFL, he might have a good game, and then he'd have a bad game, and then he'd have a bunch of average games. Because he was an average quarterback in a lot of ways, and he was always had the speed. So I mean, if you got the right coach with him, he could be really effective. But if you have a bad coach, or just an average coach who doesn't know how to work him, or if they try to do a traditional type system, he's not going to do that. He's not the quarterback who's gonna first read, second read, third read, boom, hit one of those. Hit his fourth read or whatever. He's not, he's a one read, the guy's covered, throw it to the flat. That's him. There's nothing wrong with that because he used to. I don't know if he still does, but he used to have the speed to make that kind of stuff work. I mean, hell, like I said, he's played effectively enough to help a team get to the Super Bowl. He wasn't some deterrent. He wasn't some guy who couldn't do anything. But when Jim Harbaugh, which was the coach at the time, when he left, then they brought in all these other guys. I won't even mention their names because I don't want to drag them through the mud. They weren't very good coaches. We'll just put it that way. And they didn't do a good job with Kaepernick. So some of that's on them. Some of it's on him because you need to constantly try to get better. At reading defenses, processing it, coverages, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, to me, this whole thing of him comparing the combine to slavery and all that kind of shit, it's just truly indicative of who he is and his mentality. That it's never enough to just say, because you can complain about the combine and say it's dehumanizing or whatever, but to compare it to a slave auction is just absurd. It is absolutely absurd. It's ridiculous. It's intellectually lazy. It's like when they say that, kissing a woman without her consent is sexual assault, and then they turn right around and say that rape is sexual assault too. There's degrees to this stuff. A pat on the butt or kissing a girl or whatever is not the same as fucking rape. You know what I mean? Bad words, or not, I should say bad words, but I should say unwarranted words or undesired words or catcalling and stuff. That's not rape. You sound like an idiot when you say that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, that's how they come up with the whole stat that 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted in her lifetime, because they include catcalling and stuff. And it's like, first off, I've never actually seen catcalling, in real life. I see it on the videos in some of these big towns and stuff. But it's like, okay, well, go blame those guys. Don't blame everybody. Don't blame all men for that stuff. But anyway, and then also, you got the whole idea that white people are in these combines too, as well as other races. I mean, there's I'm trying to think offhand, but I know I've seen a couple. You don't really see a whole lot of like Asians, but you do see some Latinos and stuff. You see a couple like Samoans and stuff. But it just depends. But it's primarily, I mean, obviously it's a majority black sport, but it's still ridiculous to act like, hey, this is about black people being mistreated when everybody has to go through this shit. And yes, there are times where the combine gets ridiculous. And you can say, but at the same time, they also have to know this stuff because teams are betting millions of dollars on these draft picks, basically. That if they work out, hey, great, my team's ahead for years. But if they blow up in your face, well, shit, we're behind the 8 ball again. Anyway, it's just stupid. It's just so dumb. And it just shows that this is where his mind's at. This is why you're not in the NFL, dude. Because you're not worth the trouble. You're not worth the hassle. You're talking about you got people who, who even at his best, Kaepernick would probably be, again, depending on the coach, he'd be I think he'd be a top 15, top 16 quarterback in the league, maybe. I mean, at his best. But that's only with, you got like a strong defense and so on and so forth, and he could put up some stats and everything. But at his worst, he'd be one of the worst in the league. Because if they don't have a good offensive line, which, I mean, even though mobile quarterbacks are the type of guys you want when you don't have a good O-line, but if you don't have a good O-line, it doesn't matter if you can move or not, because you're going to be constantly under duress. I mean, look at what's happening with Patrick Mahomes right now. I mean, he's not exactly like a speedster, but he's pretty mobile. And the guy's running for his life damn near every play. And it's just not working. But if, they don't have a good run game either. Which, of course, is one of the reasons why their offensive line isn't protecting as well. Because they don't, their run game's okay. But if you have a strong run game, a good O-line, and a good defense, Kaepernick can be your guy. And he can play pretty well. Although, I mean, he's clearly been passed by guys like Lamar Jackson and such. But, like Kaepernick, there's a huge, wide gulf of where he could be. He could be a top 15, top 20 quarterback, or he could be the worst quarterback in the league. Now, he would have games where he could be just unbelievable. Because, like, if you're playing a team and you're like, first read's open, bam, hitting it. The guy takes it, to the house or whatever. Or he's not there, I run. They're playing a bunch of man, so he gets to run, and he has 180 yards like he did in that playoff game against the Pack. Then you're like, hey, this is amazing. But then if you're playing a game where they're, the defense is playing some tight, bump and run coverage, some tight man or whatever, he's going to struggle like crazy against that. So it's like, you're like, is this guy worth it? Even if he said nothing, you'd be like, maybe, depending on who you got. But with this kind of shit coming out of his mouth on a constant basis, guy's wearing a Fidel Castro fucking shirt in Miami. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you, dude? It's like, it's not worth it. It's not worth the hassle. Anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap this up here. I mean, I fucking already went 14 goddamn minutes on this shit. So, just let me know what you think. I mean, I know some of you guys might not care about football. Football is a popular sport, but there's a lot of people who don't care about it. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments and stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.